explosions ripped across Caracas before dawn. The power grid collapsed, and all radar screens went black. And within hours, the United States claimed it had done something almost unheard of. It had captured a sitting president. This is the story of Delta Force and the capture of Nicolás Maduro. In the early hours of January 3, 2026, reports began spreading rapidly. Witnesses described powerful blasts across Venezuela's capital. Following that, entire neighborhoods lost electricity, military communication systems reportedly failed, and then came the announcement. US officials stated that President Nicolás Maduro had been captured by American forces and flown out of the country. But this operation did not begin that night. In fact, it reportedly began months earlier. During late summer, intelligence agencies began what are known as shaping operations. These are quiet preparations designed to make a future strike possible. According to reports, CIA personnel were inserted covertly into Venezuela. Their task was simple but critical: gather intelligence. They tracked Maduro's movements, studied where he stayed, and monitored how his security shifted from day to day. Over time, analysts developed what is called a pattern of life, which is a detailed map of habits, routines, and vulnerabilities. Despite changing locations frequently and using burner phones, Maduro was reported to spend significant time at Fort Tiuna, a heavily fortified military complex south of Caracas. The base includes bunkers, guard towers, and underground facilities built into mountainous terrain. It was considered one of the most secure places in the country. At the same time, US Cyber Command reportedly prepared digital access to Venezuelan infrastructure. Malware and network access points were allegedly placed inside key systems. This meant that when the moment came, power and communications could be disrupted instantly. However, none of that guaranteed success. Even with months of intelligence, even with cyber access, and even with air superiority plans in place, missions like this can collapse in seconds. A single early warning, a single missile strike, a single communication that slips through. Any of these things could have triggered a firefight large enough to trap the assault force inside hostile territory. Fort Tiuna was not an isolated farmhouse. It was a military stronghold. Thousands of troops were stationed there, weapons were stored there, and defensive systems were layered throughout the complex. If resistance had been coordinated, the mission could have turned into a prolonged urban battle. And time was the one thing the assault force did not have. Speed was critical, surprise was critical, confusion was critical, because once the first explosions were heard across Caracas, a countdown had already begun. At approximately 2 a.m. local time on January 3rd, the operation entered its execution phase. First came the air campaign. More than 150 US aircraft reportedly participated, including F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters, long-range bombers, surveillance planes, and electronic warfare aircraft. Their mission was to neutralize air defenses. As part of that, radar systems were targeted, missile batteries were struck, and command centers were disrupted. This phase is known as suppression of enemy air defenses. Its purpose is clear: control the sky so nothing can stop what comes next. As airstrikes unfolded overhead, the ground operation began moving into position. From offshore, helicopters launched toward the Venezuelan coast. They were flown by the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. These pilots specialize in low-level night flying under extreme risk. The helicopters flew just above the terrain, hugging the coastline and landscape to avoid radar detection. Flying at that height leaves almost no room for error. A sudden obstacle, a missile, or a burst of gunfire can end the mission instantly. According to reports, at least one helicopter came under fire and was damaged. However, it remained operational and continued forward because turning back was not an option. As it crossed inland toward Fort Tiuna, explosions and blackouts had already created confusion as military coordination reportedly collapsed and air defenses were overwhelmed. Then the helicopters landed. Delta Force operators moved quickly. The unit involved, officially known as the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, is one of the most secretive US Army units. It specializes in counterterrorism, hostage rescue, and high-value target operations. Its operators trained for years in close-quarters combat, breaching, and rapid extraction. Before the raid, planners reportedly built a full-scale replica of Maduro's safe house. Operators rehearsed repeatedly. They practiced breaching reinforced steel doors and prepared for panic rooms and escape tunnels. Now those rehearsals were real. Once on the ground, operators advanced toward the secure compound. Reports indicate they encountered gunfire and responded with overwhelming force. Intelligence had warned that Maduro might be protected by reinforced doors or a hardened enclosure. Breaching tools and explosives were reportedly used. Inside the compound, according to U.S. officials, Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were located. They were restrained and blindfolded. Within minutes, they were moved to waiting helicopters. Extraction is often the most dangerous phase of any raid. As helicopters lifted off, U.S. aircraft reportedly continued striking military targets across Venezuela. The goal was to prevent organized pursuit and create enough chaos to allow safe departure. By the end of the operation, U.S. officials reported no American fatalities, even though several personnel were wounded. Venezuelan authorities reported dozens of casualties among security forces. Shortly afterward, President Donald Trump publicly announced that Maduro had been captured and flown out of the country. Photos later circulated showing Maduro aboard the USS Iwo Jima amphibious assault ship in U.S. custody. He was later brought to New York and faced federal drug trafficking charges. Maduro pleaded not guilty and described himself as a prisoner of war. Behind the headlines and court appearances, the speed of the operation stood out to military analysts. From helicopter landing to extraction, the direct action phase reportedly lasted only minutes. Years of training had narrowed into a short window of movement, decision, and force. Delta forces train for this. They rehearse until reactions become automatic. They practice clearing rooms, identifying threats, and securing targets without hesitation. In these environments, hesitation can mean failure. At the same time, the raid demonstrated how modern special operations rely on layers. Intelligence prepared the target, cyber tools disrupted defenses, air power cleared the skies, aviation units delivered the force, and then a small team entered, executed, and exited. It was not chaos, but choreography. And yet, once complete, the consequences escaped control. The Venezuelan government condemned the raid as illegal and described it as a violation of national sovereignty, while armed militias known as collectives appeared in the streets. Checkpoints were established, public tension greatly increased. International reaction was divided. Some countries cautiously welcomed Maduro's removal, citing corruption and economic collapse under his leadership. Others, including Russia and China, condemned the operation as unlawful military intervention. The United Nations expressed concern about the broader impact on international law and regional stability. And that is where the story widens. Strategic analysts began asking a larger question. What precedent does this set? Capturing a sitting head of state through direct military action is rare. If one country justifies such an action under criminal or security grounds, other powers might use similar reasoning elsewhere. Regions already under tension could see similar logic applied. So while the raid lasted minutes, the global consequences may last much longer. This operation just shows the new nature of modern special warfare. It combines intelligence, cyber operations, air superiority, and precision ground forces into one synchronized action. Months of intelligence work, seconds of breaching, minutes of extraction. Delta Force does not operate alone. It works with intelligence agencies, aviation units, cyber teams, and political leadership at the highest level. Every piece must align perfectly. Whether this event becomes a turning point in international norms remains uncertain. However, it has already become one of the most terrifying reported uses of special operations forces in recent memory. This incident is about preparation and precision. It is about how power is projected quietly and executed suddenly. It is about helicopters flying low over dark terrain. It is about doors breached in seconds. And it is about how global politics can shift in a single night. Explosions before dawn, a president removed, and the world still deciding what it means.